Hi, everybody. I'm here with the very talented Lessa Lamb. She is a professional audio narrator, amongst other things. And one of my favorite things about Lessa is actually she was one of my first dance partners about
So
15,
much fun.
16 years ago. So it's
It
so
was so long
start.
ago.
Yeah, I know it was a long time ago. It was so
Crazy.
cool that we started as dance partners back then, and we're on that journey, and now we're both in the publishing world and on this journey. So I'm elated to be speaking with you today, and so happy to have you as part of the project. So as you guys know, one of our stretch goals for our Kickstarter is to get an audiobook recording. And I want Lessa to do our audiobook recording, hopefully for the whole series, which would be awesome. She sent me some samples, which we'll share with you guys, and you will be blown away by her work. It's so good. Um, so, anyways, so I just want to have Lesson on and wanted to just ask you some questions about your work and how you
Yeah.
got into audio recording. And let's start there. How did you
Okay.
make the transition from dancing into audio recording, and how did that happen?
Well, so interestingly, I didn't go straight from like dancing to recording audiobooks, and I'm still very active in the dance world, creating events now versus just teaching and things like that. Um, and well, creating an event, just one. If I did more than that, I think I would probably go insane.
It's a lot.
Just here in Seattle. So yeah, I decided to make audiobook narration a part of my life about 6 years ago. One of my cousins is well, my cousin Aaron's wife, Nikki. It's all complicated. She's a romance novelist, and so she's been writing for years and years, and so she had just started writing about 6 or 7 years ago, and she was wanting to turn her books into audiobooks. And I saw my cousin. He was in town for a wedding that he was going to, and I was like, oh, Nikki's doing, writing, and that's really great. And he was proud husbanding all over the place and just saying, oh my gosh, her books are so good, and she's really one of the best sellers in her genre, and everybody loves her stuff. And I was like, that's so awesome. And I was like, does she want to do audiobooks? And she was like interviewing audiobook narrators at that time. And so I cut a sample for her, and she ended up she I didn't get it to her fast enough because I didn't know. She had already, by the time I saw Aaron, she'd already chosen somebody, but she'd found a male narrator for her books, and she actually had wanted a female voice for it, but didn't find a female voice in her auditions that she liked. So I cut her a sample just in Sean Morse's attic, like just
Yeah.
recording. I recorded the whole first book in his attic. And I ended up having to re-record that book twice, actually, because I knew nothing about audio engineering, and I just had to train myself from the ground up. It took me an entire year to produce my first audiobook. So it's been a journey. It's been a just serious, like, walk the path kind of journey, like similar to your journey in your books. And it's been a really rewarding experience. And I wasn't doing it full time for a very long time. I just was doing, Nikki's books and picking up another occasional project here and there.
Mhm.
And finally, I got fired from the job that I was working at the time. And I did. I was working in car sales at the time. I'd been working for Nissan for about a year, and just some crazy stuff happened at the dealership. And the boss that I worked really well with ended up getting a better job offer and leaving. And that was a great opportunity for him and his family. And it was really quite surprising for all of us. And the dealership changed just drastically, like overnight. And it was very, very different place to work. And I wasn't a good fit anymore. And they eventually fired me. Um, and that was great. That was the nicest thing they ever did for me.
Yeah.
It was
Something that's
awesome.
like a negative often turns into a
Right.
positive.
Right.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, cool. Okay. So one of the things I remember most about us traveling together was
Hmm.
on our first tours of the UK.
Yeah.
You read to me Eat, Pray, Love.
Yep.
Like, I still
Yeah.
remember like all the trains we went on, you read to me.
Yeah.
So this is
It was
so cool.
so
Like,
fun. I loved that. Yeah.
yeah, it's totally coming full circle. And now you're reading
Now I'm
this.
reading your own story to me, to you, to you, to me too.
It's crazy. My wife and I, when we were listening to your proofs, we just lay down in the bed and we listened, and I was just so excited. I was like, "Oh my God, Les is killing it! This is great!" Killing it in the good way, not in the bad
Yeah.
way.
I mean, yeah.
So I want to know, like, what is your process when you're coming to book? Because a book like mine has a lot of different characters with a lot of different nationalities and ranges.
A
So,
lot of
like,
voices.
What is
Yeah.
your, how do you come up with these voices? What's your process when you're approaching a book like this?
Well, part of the process you went through with me, and I talk with the author. You and I had a long conversation about like, what do you want these characters to sound like? And before I have a conversation with the author, I usually want to go through a manuscript first. And you sent me about 5,000 words of your first, couple chapters, and just getting a little bit of familiarity with those characters. And a lot of those the primary characters are introduced in those first couple of chapters, and I'm sure there's other people we're going to meet along the way, and I'll develop voices for them too as we go along. But what I really like to do is, before I really get solid with a character's voice, I want to read a whole manuscript. Like, I want to know all of the things there are to know about that character as much as I can. Books that aren't written yet, of course, are, down the road, they're going to be changing maybe how that character is embodied, but that's not relevant, for right now, for this book right now. So I'm going to read as much as I can about that character. I'm going to think about what that character's feeling and going through, and what age is that character, and what kind of life have they led so far, what kinds of things are going on in their mind or in their world right now. And I'm going to think about all the different aspects of all the characters that are in the book. And especially for main characters, I want voices that sound different enough to be able to differentiate them when you're just like, if there's just dialogue, if there's just no tags that say who anybody is talking, and like, authors very rarely write like that, but sometimes you'll get a conversation that goes switching back and forth between two characters and just layers in. And you want to make sure that when you're voicing characters like this, you can really hear how that layers in. Like, if it's Isabella talking and then Tristan talking and then Isabella talking, I want to be able to know which characters those are. Or especially with characters like Tristan and Etienne,
Mm-hmm.
both male, both French, both similar in age. So really, where the voices are going to be differentiated for them is in their character. Um, for instance, Tristan in this book is he's a noble. He's the captain of her personal guard. So he's very high up in the French, not aristocracy necessarily, but he's very well respected, and in at court he's highly trusted by the royalty, the nobles in that scene. So he's going to be a little bit hoity-toity. He's going to speak with a French accent, and he's going to tell you exactly where you stand all the time. And Etienne is not like that. He's
Right.
he's a loner. He's gone. He's shipped off with the Foreign Legion, basically. Like, he's gone and to be a Templar, and he was sort of like he was not nobly born to begin with. He's sort of low man on the totem pole when it comes to French nobility, or in their circles when they were growing up. You get a little bit of their character's background just in these first couple chapters. So he was kind of the outcast that the king sort of took under his wing and said, we're gonna help your family out. We're gonna help you out. And eventually, he goes. There's some sort of incident we don't know about in these first couple chapters where he leaves, and they think that he's gone from the planet. They think he's not alive anymore. But he's gone away to be with the Templars. And so he's had a really broad cultural education at this point. So his base accent is still going to be French, but he's been now in Spain for many, many years.
Right.
And so he's, of course, probably speaking a lot of Spanish with the other, Templars, or whatever languages that they're learning, so that he can interact with his fellow Templars. We're hearing him in English still, though, of course, because the book is written in English. But so his voice may have a little bit of a French accent, but it's going to be a little bit muddled, so that you hear maybe some French in the way his vowels are formed. But sometimes it may have the cadence more like a Spanish, or maybe even Italian. And his voice is going to be a little bit softer and deeper. He's a quieter character. He's more internal. He's not as bold or in your face as Tristan. He's so there's just to differentiate those specific two characters. And then we've got commanders in the Templar army, and we've got intercalary characters falling in all over the place. And Isabella, young teenage girl. High aristocracy, French princess, very noble, but very strong-willed. Like the things you learn about her character just in these first couple chapters, she's managed to be one of 2 remaining survivors from this onslaught that they had from this attacking army. And, you know, she's fighting for her life, and she's running the heck away real fast. And, you know, she's gonna make it, you know, like you hope she's gonna make it, right? You know, like but she's powerful. You don't know yet. We don't know. I don't know. I'm like literally 2 chapters in here. She could die in chapter 3. I have no idea, but I doubt it. So yeah, so, you know, for Isabella, she's French, you know, obviously, so we're going to be keeping with that sort of French accent. And it's nice that there's a lot of French characters in this book, because that's one of the languages I actually speak.
Would you do her accent really quickly for everybody at home? I love the way you portray Isabella. Like the moment I heard that, my heart just went.
Isabella is very young, and she's quite confident, but she's a much more lofty voice. Her voice is more a little bit breathy, but she is strong and powerful, and she will tell you exactly what she thinks all the time. And she is not going to be manhandled by the guards at court or told what to do by anyone. She will decide for herself. Thank you very much.
Oh,
so and I mean, again, you know, when you're a voice actor, you're playing with accents all the time, and so it's a challenge. I love books like this because it challenges me to go and look up different accents. Like, so one of the people in the book, you know, you said is from the Netherlands, and then the guy that you see in the prologue, he's Basque.
Yeah.
Oh man, Basque language is fascinating. It is so fascinating. I went to look up vocal reference for Basque language. Yeah. There isn't any. There's just not any. You can hear people speaking Basque. So what I ended up having to do for Arnold was actually listen to people speaking Basque language and try to figure out what kind of phonemes I needed to use in his American, his like speaking English voice. It was such a trip because there was like, you can hear Basque natives speaking English, but the Etruscan accent is not, it wasn't a live language for a very long time. It was like almost ousted from Spain, from the north of Spain. So a lot of the people in, this is just my very brief research that I did on Basque and Etruscan language. But because it fell out of favor for so many years, and in fact, people were prohibited from speaking Basque in their native lands for a long time. It was like a secret language, but it's coming back into the fore now, and it's being more respected and more widely spoken. But there is a lot of Spanish influence in the accents that you hear now speaking Basque. So it's like, how do you differentiate? Because Etruscan is just a completely different language, literally with zero ties to any other language in the world, which is fascinating. It was so interesting.
It's super fascinating. And it is what you say about it coming back these days. When you walk the Camino, it's very interesting politically, going from Basque into the Basque country into the other parts of Spain. You see a change. You know, some of them, like there's graffiti that says not part of Spain and other things like this. So on a cultural level, when you walk the Camino today, you can see all that stuff happening. And it's really, really cool. And so for those of you listening, I found Lessa to be incredibly professional as we've been going through this. She prepared like a whole like not Dropbox but Google Drive for me with different folders for character breakdowns, samples. I was like, oh my God, Lessa, how do I use this? It's so much. I love
it. Well, I've recorded almost 30 books at this point, so I've got a process. You know, you get through it to a certain point. You learn what works for you. And not all narrators do this kind of thing. Some are just like, oh, I read a manuscript and I record a book. But I gotta have a little bit more. You know, I take metrics for how long it's taking me to record something, or, you know, I want to know how many words are in a chapter so I know how long it's going to take me to record. So when I sit down to do a session, I can know how long I'm going to be, how many chapters I can do in that session. Like if I'm going to sit down for 3 hours and record, that means I can do about 6,000 words. Like, but I do record about 3,000 words an hour, ish, you know. So if I've got a 1,700 word chapter and a 2,000 word chapter and, you know, a 150 word chapter and like a 6,000 word chapter, then I know I might not be able to get through all of those in one session, but I might, we'll see. So I just need to know, it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I was just really impressed with your professionalism approaching it. As you know, I work on a lot of film and other things, and
Yeah.
you're just as organized as any producer that I've met in the film world. So it was really, really, really cool to see that. And then also, I've I've only shared this with one other person besides my wife, and she's also an author, and she's like, "Can I hire her?"
Yes, I'm about it. That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
Narrators, our favorite words are series and I want an audiobook. Like, this is my favorite phrases to hear. Like, as the
Exactly.
author says series, we're like, yes, oh yeah, I'd like that. Yeah, let's do that.
And so there's going to be, like my hope is that anybody who's listening out there, if you want to do an audiobook, contact Lessa. Lessa, how can they get a hold of you? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Sure. You can reach me in a number of different ways. Facebook, my name is Lessa J. Lamb on Facebook, or narrator Lessa Lamb on Facebook. My email is contactlessalamb@gmail.com. So, and my name is, it's just the word contact. And my name is spelled Lessalamb, just like the small fluffy lambs you see in Ireland. But yeah, and so those are, email or Facebook, or if you are familiar, if you're an author who's produced, who's worked with audio before, and you're familiar with ACX, the Audiobook Creation Exchange, you can find me. I have a profile there. Or you can go to my webpage, lessalamb.com. There's a SoundCloud link with a bunch of different samples. You can hear my work. If you go on Audible, you can look me up there. There's just a number of ways to find me.
So
If you want to listen to the books I've already recorded, you can find me on Audible. Just do a search for my name, and there's tons of samples up there, like about 30 books up there that you can go run through. A word to the wise, many of my narrations are romance novels. So be prepared for that.
So the cool thing is, I didn't really even know you were doing this. I knew you were doing it like a little bit. But we haven't actually spoken in,
No, we haven't talked in a while.
We haven't spoken in a long time. So when I found out that you're doing this, I was just like, wow, that's so cool. I've just loved through this whole process, just hearing, like, even just now sitting with you, hearing you describe my characters. I'm like, wow, that's a book I want to read. Like, that's
good.
You sold me.
It's funny. Good. I'm sold. I'll read that book. Great. You wrote it. I'm glad you want to read it. One of the things that I put in my narrator profiles is, like, one of the things that I'm most passionate about is bringing a book to life in such a way that, like, you were talking about, like, your wife and your wife laid down in bed and were listening to the book and you were so intrigued by it. Like, my goal as a narrator, like my goal in life in this work, is to make the book so fascinating and so gripping and so intriguing, and so much what the author had in mind when they were hearing it, when they were writing it in their head, that they get engrossed in the story they have written. Like, this story so well, you know it inside out. You wrote the dang thing. You've revised it a dozen times. You've been working on it for years, literally. And many authors feel that way, especially about first novels. You produce something and you've worked on it so hard. And I'm passionate about helping an author just really make those characters sing. Sometimes literally, I have sung in books, but really bringing that narrative to life in a way that captivates even the person who wrote it. Yeah. That's really my goal.
It's interesting. One of my favorite things as a writer is after everybody reads the first chapter, I ask them what color was Isabella's hair.
Oh, nice.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
I don't mention what color Isabella's hair is, but everybody's sure that she's blonde, or they're sure that she's brunette or whatnot. Yep. And for me, it's just seeing, like, being able to see what the picture is in their mind that they create from just the information that I give them. And so that's, like, one of my favorite things to do. And with hearing you read it, I actually got different pictures in my head than what I had originally in my head. Huh. So it was a very interesting experience for me. So it evoked different visuals for me than I normally would have had. So I found that to be a very fascinating thing coming through.
I'm finding that fascinating. How did it change for you? What did you see at first when you were writing it, and what did you see when you were listening?
I don't know. I mean, it just sounded like a different world. Like,
wow.
Not bad world. I mean, not like different bad like than the one that I created, but just like a different sort of context, like a different texture to that world, which is interesting. And I think a lot of it had to do with phrasing and other things. And so it was a really fascinating experience to do that, just from my end as an author. So from your perspective, the book, of what you've read so far, what is your takeaway from it?
I love it so far. It's so I'm so fascinated by the detail that you put in. I'm just really like intrigued by all the historical context. I don't do a lot of historical fiction in my narration work. There are a lot of people who write historical romance. Like I said, the bulk of my work is romance right now.
Yeah.
But I haven't done a lot of historical romance. I've done a lot of just fantasy fiction, kind of things. So a lot of the work that I'm doing isn't like historically researched work. There's not a context that you can refer back to with factual information about these worlds. So it's so interesting to me to like be learning about something with historical context and say like, there's a footnote there. I can go read about that, like, ooh, this person, Arnold of Toroha, like actually existed, that's so cool to me. Like, so it's just been really fun to be like, ooh, I can learn about this person, or I can go and research the Arc of San Anton and learn more about that. And oh, there's this video that you're doing, like for the Kickstarter. Look, there it is. That's the arc. Holy crap, like it's right there. It's fascinating. Like it really is like just so intriguing. Like there's so much to learn about, and like. This is me on a new book almost every time. I'm just getting so excited about the characters and like immersing myself in a new story. And humans love stories. Like that's what we live for. It's how we create our worlds. It's how we create our lives. Honestly, we tell stories to ourselves about what we're experiencing. We tell stories to our children and our friends and our lovers and our grandparents and our parents, and our grandparents tell us stories. And the ways that we create our lives are literally through stories. So finding a new story, finding someone else's story, connecting with that world, there's just such a life-giving force behind that. And your creation of the blend of historical context and personal story for you and the different aspects of yourself that you describe in these characters, it's also amazing for me to learn more about you in these different ways too. It's very interesting.
It's very vulnerable.
It is. Writing is a very vulnerable art. It really is.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a very interesting experience, and I love that you like the appendix in the back of the book. One of my favorite things is I can teach people about like all this different thing. Like, as you said, Arnold Rioja, he was the Grand Master right before the Holy Land fell. I mean, the Holy Land literally fell right after him. So he was a real character. He was really from Spain, like that region. Like it makes sense that he would be there. Like all the things come, and when you go to the cathedrals and you see these like ruins, like Celtic Viking ruins, or inscriptions that look like Ethiopian, like there's something there, and then just tying it in like with this history of these people who actually would have been around that time. So it's super fun. I love it. It is so cool.
I've always considered myself a writer in some way, but I've never created stories like this. And it's so fascinating to me when an author comes to me and they're like, this is my story, this is the world that I've created. And I just like, it's just amazing to me how people put these things together into this cohesive crafted piece of art that describes all of these beautiful things and brings these amazing images into my head. And like, I've always been a reader throughout my whole life. Like I've read book after book after. When I was a kid, I used to do those like book it festivals over the summer and just read voraciously. Like it was just more words in my mind, just get it in my head. And I've just always been just passionate about books and reading. And so this really is the perfect work for me because it's like every day I get to both acquire a new world to live in, meet new friends, and find new stories. But then I also get to help be a part of that artistic process. And it's a gift. I couldn't imagine a better life.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time with us today, Les,
Yeah, of
and
course.
thank you for your work. Like I said, we'll be releasing a couple chapters, sneak peek chapters, and also on one of the days when we reach the Arc of San Antonio. So every day we're doing a video of walking the Camino for every day of the Kickstarter, so people can walk with us 34 days across the Camino.
Cool.
And on day 13, which I just showed you that I was editing, we get to Castle Jerez we get to the Arc of San Antonio, and I have put some of Les's narration into the video for you guys, so you get to see kind of like these places that these characters would be. So what I'm gonna do, we'll put connections to your website and everything in the link below the YouTube video. And Les, I'm so happy to have you a part of my life. Also, so happy to have you a part of this book.
I'm so happy to be here.
15 years ago, 20, however long ago, we were
at this point.
and now here we are, like, going into the next chapter together and like moving into this next field. And we had a very successful partnership there, and I'm sure we'll have a very successful partnership here as well. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being my friend.
Of course.
Bye, everybody. We love you out there.
Bye, guys.